Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our painting of the Betrayer's War miniatures for Descent Legends of the Dark. Today I'm joined by three wonderful guests, including a very special guest today. So I'll let everyone introduce themselves around the table.
Hey, I'm Mason. I'm the marketing graphic designer.
I'm Scott, the Miniature Maniac, a YouTuber.
And I'm Brooks. I'm one of the game designers on Legends of the Dark Act 2.
So today we're going to be going into a little bit of painting of a couple different miniatures. We've, as you might have seen, gotten ahead of ourselves and started painting a little early, but that's a good thing. That way we can show off some really cool stuff at the end. So basically this whole conversation is going to go through very kitchen table painting stream. So if you all at home have something that you're been putting off, as I know you probably have, and you're really looking forward to painting it, today's the day to do it. Break it out, let's all paint together and just hang out. And I know myself, I do not paint miniatures very often, so this is going to be a big learning stream for me. But we've got some very talented individuals with me. And so hopefully we'll learn a lot about Descent and painting in general.
Yeah, and I don't know what we're talking about. I have 0 unpainted miniatures. I'm fully painted.
Yes, fully painted, as I've learned all miniature painters are. Fully done. Yeah. You definitely don't have
I don't buy minis I don't need.
Yeah.
Like, no, not at all.
Cool. So if we want to go around, we can talk about who we're painting and what color schemes we're doing and things like that. Yeah, we can feel free to throw them up there if you have a good look on them already.
Yeah,
so
I'll put my guy up here.
So Mason, who are you painting?
I am working on this salamander.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, so I started off with a little pretty purpley contrast paint base, and now I'm building up some green layers, kind of going from dark to light. And I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with this sort of fire detail yet. I believe in the painting guide it's sort of a blue flame. So maybe I'll do that. Maybe it'll be more magenta. Who knows? I'm having fun.
I just got started, so I don't even know you need to throw mine up there. It's not worth the look yet. But I'm painting Chance, and I'm using our handy-dandy painting reference from the website. That's under player resources on the Descent page. And so I'm going to be painting Chance in some like dark purples with light purple highlights, and painting Chance to be like the gray with black accents on there. So yeah, looking forward to that.
Cool, yeah. I have just a bunch of base coats, but I want to make a comment about the gold that I'm using.
Yeah.
So that's Brienne. I mentioned earlier before we started the stream that I actually played Brienne in the first act of Descent, so it was kind of serendipitous that you gave me that model to paint.
Yeah.
But so right now I'm using a sickly gold color, and I don't know, hues in general have so much mileage. Like when I say the color yellow, like you think of a very specific tone, right? Mm-hmm. Like a banana peel or something like that.
Yeah.
But like really, yellow is neighboring green, it's neighboring orange, and you can desaturate it. You can flirt with one of those other colors. So you can go all over the place with color. And so one thing that I've kind of recently enjoyed is doing a green gold. Ooh. And so this kind of more desaturated, kind of almost like gold mixed with black is a great start for that. Mm-hmm. And then like a wash of green on top of that kind of shifts it in that way. And then highlighting it up with more kind of like pale, desaturated golds. It's really cool to get like a sickly color. So that's what I'm working on right now.
Very cool.
And I am working on Leverax, the villain of Act 2, who we're not going to put in front of the camera, I don't think, because I don't think she'll fit.
No.
Not fit in so many things.
Yeah.
She's quite tall, she's quite imposing, and I am trying out a technique. I want to paint her in a stained glass style, like some of the art in the Terranoth setting itself. And so currently I'm going through and just blacklining all of the details. Mason, why don't you just set that down on her side?
Yeah.
How many hours so far?
I think I'm 16 hours into that, just painting black lines around all the details.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like talking with friends and stuff as we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that works out really well.
Monstrous.
That's the side I had painted more of, so that's
awesome.
her good side.
Tricky one.
Yeah. Cool. So we had someone in the chat asking like what brands they would recommend. I think we're using quite a few different brands of paint here at the table overall. So
Yeah.
they're asking. They're a first timer.
I mean,
like yeah.
Genuinely, whatever you have access to, use it. It'll be fine. There are like different paint ranges will have different sort of properties to them, and will sort of handle a little differently. So if you're going for a specific effect, you'll want to look to find a paint range that uses that effect, but by and large, they're fairly comparable, and you can use them for very similar things.
Yeah. We're just kind of spoiled for choice like nowadays with a lot of companies coming out with new paint ranges with modern technologies and materials. I've actually experimented recently with a lot of different ranges. I have Vallejo Game Color in front of me. I have AK Interactive. I have Scale 75. I have Citadel. And, you know, they're all pretty similar in performance nowadays. So you can probably get away with whatever's at your local game store, to be perfectly honest. Definitely there's some craft paints at like stores like Joann's that don't perform as well as like your typical miniature painting ranges, but anything in that world is going to operate pretty similar.
Someone also said we should skip the painting and make you play Twilight Imperium with
Ooh,
us.
that's a game I haven't played yet. It's definitely on the list.
Yeah, we haven't streamed that in a while. We're probably due for it.
No,
so
yeah,
we did last year.
Yeah,
for
last
for the
summer.
25th anniversary.
Oh, yeah, I
true.
was on that one too,
Yeah.
but you know,
Once a
There's
year.
We could always do it more often. Yes.
yeah.
Dude, yeah.
I'm
there
always
are
down.
plenty of people around the office who would be down for that.
That's
Yeah.
true.
I love a board game that takes like 6 hours or something like that. You know,
I
I
do
love
too,
sitting
yeah.
down and just like having some snacks and just playing a nerdy game for super long.
Well, you're in the right place.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were surrounded by your people right now.
That was one of the things that was really fun working on this project, is essentially being the game master for everyone who ever plays the scenarios I wrote
Yeah.
in Set
yeah,
Legends.
basically, yeah.
Having to essentially program in all that stuff, come up with like, okay, this is the situation I'm putting the players in. How will they try and overcome it? Try and make it as intuitive as possible.
So are you writing the rules for the situations or more like the narrative flow of each situation?
Both, and it's a shared effort.
Okay.
So we had 3 game designers: Philip Henry, Aaron Haltom, and myself, and we were doing the programming really, because most of what we were doing was within the app. To basically set up the scenarios, have as you interact with things on the board, the app can then feed you hidden information, tell you the story. We can even do little cutscenes with characters and stuff, and that way you are discovering things, and things are being revealed to you in a similar way as would be the case in a role-playing game, but everybody's on the same team, and you don't need a game master because that's what the game is doing for you.
Right. Yeah.
And then we also had Dan Clark was our story lead and also the head of the Terranoth story group. So he was sort of the lead on the overarching story, but we ended up personally writing each of the quests we did. We would write most of the story ourselves and run it past him. And then we also had a whole cast of interactive folks who were building the tools we used to make everything in the app, in the programming side, behind the scenes.
So a huge collaborative effort.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense for a thing that large. Most things are collaborative.
And we are going to say that we probably will spoil a couple of things as we're talking about this. The game's been out for what, 6 months? Descent Act 2?
Close to.
Close to 6 months. So we'll try to avoid major spoilers. But as we're chatting, we're going to just chat about the game because we're really excited about it, and we want you to be able to talk more openly about what you worked on with it, and not be like,
it's a story. It's a story as well as a game.
Yeah.
And just because you know something will happen doesn't mean you know how it will happen or how impactful it will be to you. And there are some things that will change based on your actions. There are some characters who will live or die based on your actions. There are some characters who will redeem themselves or fall to evil because of your actions. It is the Betrayer's War, after all. And so there's a difference between knowing the story and having gone through the story yourself. Because even in small ways, different dialogue choices that you make will inform the way you think of the characters. For example, each of the characters has 2 different characteristics that it's not a good and evil dichotomy, right? All of our heroes are good, but it's sort of 2 aspects of their personality that are in a bit of tension with one another, and so at various points in the game, you have the opportunity to choose between them So, for example, Bryn's aspects are nobility and valor.
That makes
And
sense.
so she's trying to balance this sort of like, I mean, she is an aristocrat. She's part of the ruling nobility. The sort of traditional, sort of knightly, courtly chivalry with doing the best she can in the circumstances she has. And those, like, neither of those things is inherently bad, or at least the aspects we're focusing on aren't inherently bad.
Yeah.
But you're sort of deciding what to emphasize of your character, and that will shape some of your options over the course of the campaign.
That was one thing that surprised me when I was playing the first Descent, was that at certain points in the scenario, you have to make choices that then kind of split you on a path. And with Brienne, like, you have the choices that are kind of like, I'm going to value like king and country over like the little guy. And so, as someone who loves villains and aristocratic villains, I always want like the kind of the more evil choice with Brienne, because I kind of like that a lot. Like, I like the Empire and Star Wars and like all that stuff. So that was really cool that you were able to kind of like change how your character like interacted with the game, like for the future, with like choices in the present. That was really cool.
Kaylee, the dwarf inventor, her intentions are reliability and innovation. And so it's easy to frame one of those two as the sort of like less changing and therefore less good thing. But there's points where like nobility or reliability, or like Cyrus has to choose between ambition and optimism, and it's not necessarily always a clear choice. Well, it's intentionally not from the design side. There is not a right answer to them. It's more of the names are somewhat of a theme aspect to that.
Cyrus is who I played in Act 1 and
Yeah.
continuing to play into Act 2. I love the ambition versus optimism. I'm like an optimistic person, but I didn't want to play the exact way that I would play. I was
Right.
like, I'll try something different. And so I went with the ambition for a lot of it.
Nice. So how often do we all paint miniatures in a given week?
At least twice a week,
nice.
because I've got Shield Maidens on Sunday and then Paint Night on
Oh,
Monday.
you're part of that in Source?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And then sometimes Tuesday as well, whether or not I'm gaming.
Okay.
I'm either big into it or on another train, you know. Sometimes
Feast
I'm
or
in-
famine kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I'm either in painting mode or I'm kind of more of an airbrush guy a lot of the time, different kinds of model kit stuff. But
Okay.
yeah, and usually that's like for like a couple months at a time. Then I gotta take a little break.
Okay.
Very little. Honestly, I wish I painted more. I painted some for a couple different games, but it's been probably 6 months since I last painted, so this is super fun to get back into it.
Okay. Mostly for display, for gaming. What do we lean?
Mostly for gaming.
Okay.
I do a lot of historicals, and so I'm more interested in like having stuff for a game I can run than for anything particularly high quality. I just enjoy the act of painting stuff.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just like to display it, and I love to do dioramas and stuff too. Like I made our little play set for showing off our
Nice.
miniatures today, and that's just, oh man, check it out. If you go down to your local hobby store and get some diorama stuff, big recommend.
Yeah, I did it for gaming. Unfortunately, most of mine are now for display
Okay.
because I just don't play as many games as I'd like. Just too many good ones. So it's like, I painted it for like 3 different games, and I was like, oh no, I can't play 3 different games constantly.
Yeah.
But definitely in my display and my background a lot.
That's cool.
Yeah, this is. So, Brooks, you were talking about some of the scenarios that you each got to design and things. Is there one that in particular that you were like really passionate about, or you feel like
Yeah,
really shows off your design?
This is scenario 10, which they're not necessarily played in order through Act 2, but it is called The Betrayal. There will be some spoilers here, Scott.
Okay.
But I will not spoil the ending, because I cannot spoil the ending because there are multiple possible endings depending on what players choose.
Nice.
But essentially, a large part of the plot of The Betrayer's War is that at the end of Act 1 of Descent: Legends of the Dark, the setting's foundational villain, Wyquar the Betrayer, has returned to Terranoth. He's an undead necromancer. He used to be a great hero, but then became a villain. And all of that stuff is so far back in the setting's history that there hasn't been a game in which he actually was an opponent kind of thing for decades, if ever. I don't know if he was in any of the really old stuff. And so a lot of the Descent games more recently have been set sort of in sort of the aftermath, the Fallen Kingdom, the Ancient Ruins, which is great for like dungeon crawling, having that sort of overall vibe that you expect out of a medieval fantasy kind of thing. But we wanted to actually have the players for Legends take part in events of similar importance, take part in basically a defining moment in the setting's history. And so Wyquar's return is like if Attila the Hun came back, or after sacking Rome, and like a character so far back in history who is like, you're not even entirely sure if they're real or not.
Yeah.
At least to the audience, obviously knows Wyquar is real and has for some time, but the characters in the setting, he's a rumor, a myth, a legend, if you will. That's the name of the game. And so the characters are sort of living through the next dark age, the next darkness, as is the setting's term for basically the periods of extreme upheaval.
Okay.
And the awkward thing is, he is still technically a baron. He's still technically part of the ruling structure of the government of the kingdom. And so his return in the middle of these several other crises, people aren't entirely sure he's actually the villain right now. He's obviously a bad guy.
Yeah.
He's called the betrayer for a reason, but he's not the obvious immediate threat. That is the dragons, who have invaded. And so a significant plot of Act 2 is the heroes trying to convince everybody else, no, this guy is the villain for real. The players obviously know, but the characters either don't know or have reasons to look the other way, or are forced into an impossible choice. Like families are held hostage. They need his army for the war against the dragons, even though his army is a bunch of undead people from their own kingdom.
Are there multiple dragon miniatures in the game?
Well, so there's Leverax is the only true dragon miniature, but there are miniatures of the dragon hybrids who are their canon offspring.
We have one of those.
Yeah, one of the characters in the first deck was kind of like
This is right here, right? This or no?
Yeah,
this,
so that's the Doomcaller.
yeah.
And the salamanders are also dragonkin
Yeah, it's kind
related
of
to dragons.
Yeah,
the hybrids are
real deal,
explicitly created by them.
That's cool.
You know, I love a good evil name, and Doomcaller is pretty
Oh
good.
yeah.
Doomcaller, yeah.
Yeah,
Doomcaller,
with the big old
Earthshaker,
bell.
you know, just
Yeah,
like words
oh,
like,
yeah.
just
Yeah.
epic names.
Mason the Doomcaller Sklar. That has a ring to it.
Yeah, we need to get some nicknames. I mean, I'm responsible for the lower thirds. Next time, I'm gonna put Doom Caller in there.
I appreciate it. I need it.
So this quest, the Betrayal, is the culmination of that arc of basically you trying to convince the people, the other leaders of the kingdom, that Wyquar is manipulating everyone to serve his own ends. It's the Betrayer's war, after all.
Yeah.
Which is not actually the war against the betrayer. It is the war the
It's
betrayer is manipulating.
Right. Tricky.
And this is not really spoilers. This is readily apparent from very early on, but it's apparent to the players and to a lesser extent to their characters, but they have to find proof, convince people that is actually the case.
Yeah.
And so that is, this quest is where it all comes together. There's a whole meeting of all of the barons, at least all of the barons you can get a hand on at the time, because we're not going to depict all 12 of them.
Yeah.
Especially when most of them, a large chunk of them are not taking part in the story as directly. But so you've got basically this big council of war where you're trying to convince everyone that the villain is in fact the villain, because there are other villains too.
Yeah.
And then you've got these very strong clashing personalities between some of the major characters, and you'll be forced to make a choice between a couple of major characters in the story, and that will make one of them permanently into a villain, and the other won't really make them a hero, but it will like maybe start their path of redemption, depending on what you choose. You can't really. You can go from hero to villain overnight. You can't go back from villain to hero overnight.
Yeah.
But you can still keep playing and interacting with the game as a villain?
No, it makes one of the major NPCs.
Oh, NPCs. Okay.
So there's a character who has been in Descent a long time, Baron Zakhareth. He was a villain in the core set of Descent Journeys 2nd edition, I believe. Rune Wars, the miniatures game, had a more ambiguous take on him, where it sort of wasn't clear whether he was the villain or not. If it was a case of what was good for one group was bad for another, he made a choice he had to make, kind of thing. The novel really played into that more, of sort of this guy who's taking extreme measures. It's hard to say whether he's a ruthless but well-intentioned person, or he's just hungry for power and deluded by that pursuit of power. And so you get to choose. Is he ultimately working for good or not? But it's framed against another character, a character we introduced in Act 2, Count Rainier of Witherall, who is a vampire.
Ooh.
This is not at all a spoiler. It's telegraphed very
You're
heavily.
speaking my language right now.
He is a vampire. He's an agent of Wyquar, but he's not particularly enthusiastic about it. He's really lonely. He's been a vampire for a long time. He thought it would work out great, and it really hasn't.
That'd be sick. I'm gonna love being alive forever.
Yeah.
Feeding on
great
the lower
time.
class.
Yeah.
But like, yeah. So he's having a crisis of confidence. And it's up to you, the audience, each in your own playthroughs, to see like which of these characters is redeemable, maybe, because like everyone's going to have their own personal preferences, their own takes on these characters.
Yeah.
And that's not even the end of the quest. Then you have to fight whichever one you have rejected, and and you can succeed or fail. So that will leave. There are a number of possible outcomes to that quest. It was very fun. It was a lot of writing to do, to have the dialogue basically feel compelling and meaningful. And
How often does your job feel like a job, or is it just like fun all the time?
it feels like a job a lot of the time.
Does it? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm listening to everything you're saying, and I was like, dang, it sounds like an awesome thing to do for a job.
It's so like the times when you are conceptualizing those processes, right? When we were having the meetings where we talked about and planned all that out, we were very excited, having a great time. It didn't feel like a job.
Yeah.
But then you actually have to do it, and you have to document it, and you have to write. So I'll just give an example of what the programming looks like for this scenario.
How many words is the whole story?
Act 1 was about as long as The Hobbit. Act 1 and Act 2 combined is like the Lord of the Rings trilogy. We wrote you a trilogy novel, also stuck it in the middle of a game. Don't worry about it. A lot of those words are instructions to the player rather than
Narrative
per se. And also, a lot of those words you will not see because a decent chunk of them are behind some decision that has you have one. And often there will be like, the first two sentences are the same and the third sentence changes, kind of thing. We try and like not make the work unnecessarily hard for ourselves.
Definitely.
But like for the scenario, we've got, I think there are 5 major characters to talk to in the scenario. And then there are 6 heroes. And I intentionally went through and was like, I want to have which player you are controlling when you have this conversation matter. So those characters will say different things to different heroes.
That's cool.
But that means
A lot more.
that
work.
means five characters, right?
Yep.
Times 6 different heroes who can talk to them. That's 30. That's 30 different conversations, not dialogue boxes,
Yeah.
conversations.
Yeah.
And so I did some fun stuff to try and basically allow those conversations to overlap and reuse what material they can from each other. So with most of the characters' interactions, you will have basically a conversation about X topic, flavored like these two characters would talk about it. Chance
Yeah.
is going to talk about things very differently than Kaylee
Yeah.
and Galadin. Cyrus is kind of our vehicle for plot exposition because he's the knowledgeable character
Yeah.
who is well read and knows about the history, and so he will like tell you things that you might want to know.
That's really cool.
You gotta have someone who can do exposition when you're like world building
Yeah.
and setting
Yeah.
a stage, right?
Yeah.
As you know.
Yeah.
We're going to do a quick update. We can show mine off now. It's purple, which is great for me.
Yeah, hey,
And
that's purple.
Yeah, he's got purple pants and a little purple around his bandolier there type deal. And so it's, yeah, painted him. I'm going with gray. I'm going to add some black to his fur in a little bit, but it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. So I'm feeling pretty great so far.
Yeah, remember your confidence.
Yeah, if I feel confident, it's going to look good. So yeah, I want to show that one off. Mason, do you want to show off yours?
Yeah, pop mine. I'm close. Yeah, it's just maybe it doesn't look extremely different from last time, but you know, greening up the scales here, just
Yeah,
trying to get a little more green saturation there,
that's very cool.
get a little lighter.
Very cool.
If you could place this showing that wing.
Yes.
Yeah. Am I relatively safe on the base here?
Yeah, it's all dry. So I am starting to panel out sections of the wing. I'm not going to paint each sort of membrane of the wing all in one color. I'm going to panel it out a bit to get a stained glass effect there between each of the sort of bony spurs.
Yeah, there we go.
So I'm going through, I've already outlined everything. I'm going back through and putting in the panels in between now.
That's so cool. I can't wait to see this thing in stained
Yeah.
glass.
I have no idea how it's going to look.
I think it's gonna
Cool.
Be,
I
yeah,
think it's gonna
cool.
look
I haven't made too much progress, but I applied a big wash to all the armor, and while it's drying, I'm painting her face. And I wanted to share a tip with people who struggle to paint things like eyes and also just small details in general, right?
So painters.
Yeah. That's a common issue, right? Could we go to the camera, the zoom in? So one thing I do when I'm painting small details is, well, first thing you need to have a brush that comes with a sharp tip. Like that's a pretty nice tip. But another thing you can do when it's a little bit moist is you can press the brush into like your fingers or any flat surface. And then in one orientation, it's like kind of like wider and kind of like a fan, and then the other one is super sharp. And then with that sharp edge, you can like approach the eye like from the side. And like when you're painting eyes, it's not about a literal brush stroke, right? You put a little dot down, trying to figure out if your bristles are in the right spot. I'm not doing it right now for real. I'm just kind of like miming it. So you put a dot down, and it's okay. I'm in the center of the eye. I'm a little bit off center, and okay, now I move. And you kind of just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and then the bristles will splay more and more and more, and the eye will get bigger and bigger and bigger. So you're not actually like painting the eye. It's too small for that.
Yeah.
So get that nice sharp edge. Orient it so the sharp edge is right along with the eye, and then kind of just tap, 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 tap until it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah,
Try
that's.
that out, yeah.
You know what? I'm going to go to eyes.
Yes, do
Yes.
it. Yes.
Yeah.
So many people in my live stream have this chant where basically they refuse to paint eyes, and so on all their minions they have kind of like a helmet or like just darkened down eyes, which is totally fine. But I love painting eyes. It gives so much character and life to everyone. So yeah, definitely like to encourage it.
Yeah, and Chance has such big eyes.
Oh,
And so,
nice.
Yeah,
Okay,
like
that's
so I was like,
cat
that's super
eyes.
helpful. the
Yeah.
big
There you
cat
go. Yeah,
eyes.
get in there. Yeah.
So
Cute cat.
could I borrow like the
Kinda looks like
orange
my
or
cat a
gold
little
you
bit.
have there?
So these are kind of pastel-y.
Oh, they're
Let me get
pastel-y?
you a more solid color.
I wasn't. I'm so sorry that I'm making you get another
Cool.
out.
I mean, you probably have to thin this a little, but
Yeah. Oh.
I would actually do a bit of that first,
Okay.
because the straight yellow is going to have a hard time covering.
Yeah.
And so
Okay.
starting
That
with
is
a
true.
cream or a brown, and then what did you have? You had-
This is
okay.
deep.
Okay, I have
deep.
flat yellow. That's pretty comparable.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't gonna paint the eyes because, like you said, I was just like, I'd be fine without it. But the big eyes on chance, and they're like goldish in the painting reference, and I was like, that just looks ridiculously cool with the purple around them.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, nice contrast there.
I actually have a good reference for her eyes right now.
When you guys are painting miniatures, do you often derive your own schemes? Do you base it off of like a lore thing, or do you look at other people's work? How do you come up with the schemes for your miniatures?
Well, with this one in particular, because it's sculpted with so much detail on the armor, I'm just going to do Leverax herself. I've got a couple of the images from the game printed out for reference. I think most of the time I trend to do something that like is either historically accurate to the extent that that's possible, because quality control on like inks and colors and fabrics doesn't actually make that possible all the time. For anything with a historical basis.
Right.
Fantasy stuff, then I'll just kind of do whatever looks cool.
Okay, okay.
If there's anything in the lore, real or fantastical, I often try to copy that, or kind of like make up my own reason why it can be different.
Okay.
Yeah, I like to start with a color I think is cool and just kind of build up the scheme from there. Like, yeah, I did a plastic model kit robot recently where I was just kind of thinking about the PS2 games of my youth, and a lot of the UI uses like dirty orange. It's like burnt orange sort of thing, and I was like, I want to do something where like that's like the featured highlight colors, like this burnt orange, warm gray combination, and then add a little teal into there, and there was a color scheme.
Okay.
Nice.
I do that same thing. I start with the color that I like, and then
Yeah.
I try to build out the scheme from there. And I think kind of an unsung hero in miniature painting is like, it's not just what colors you're using, but it's also where
What
you're
colors
placing
you're- yeah,
them,
it is.
how much surface area they're taking up,
Yeah.
where they are on the model, and stuff like that. So yeah, it's easy to start with a thing you like, and then kind of like grow out from there.
Yeah.
That's fair. I, like Brooks, go with like, okay, what should this look like based on lore or the story
Absolutely.
behind it?
Absolutely.
Just because, yeah, I start there and then I go, can I do that? Do I have the technique? No. Okay, now I can backtrack it, like color scheme wise. Am I in the ballpark and things like that?
I also, when I'm doing that, I like to find something that's like a little unusual. That's like pretty close to what you'd expect, but differs in some way that is interesting.
Absolutely.
Give it a little twist. Brooks, you were also mentioning about like the color design of like the game generally, like when Xander was talking about the purple pants on chance, reminding me of that as some interesting stuff.
Yeah, so this is a bit of a like game design window into some of the stuff. But so when we commission these art pieces for the characters of the game that appear on the app, in the cards, also inform the miniature sculpts as well. There will be an attempt to sort of like make sure they look like heroes, make sure they look like villains, make sure they look like charming NPCs you want to talk to. And there will often be some sort of visual shorthand for that. So for example, for Descent here, our heroes all have gold elements in their outfits, and some have warmer outfits, some have cooler outfits, although most of them are in warm or tones that are pulled towards the warm end, even if they're purples. But Chance, for example, who's a rogue, who's a thief, who's a bandit, at the start, he's a very good-hearted bandit and quickly stops being a bandit, but is still a bit of a outside-the-law person. So he's got a very heavy purple element, which is sort of one of our evil colors. That's like the color of Wyquar kind of thing. Because we use green, Leverax is green, so many of the dragons also have the Dragons and Dragonkin have strong sort of emerald green elements, but Galladin's green is more of a forest green, a slightly warmer, more friendly looking color kind of thing. All the heroes have a gold detail of some kind, and many of the NPCs will have elements to like key the players in, if even subconsciously, on who they're aligned with. Sometimes it's literal heraldry, but sometimes it's just elements of design, warmer, like friendlier tones versus harsher tones, which generally is cooler and warmer tones.
Yeah, that's
But-
pretty classic. We knew that forever, right? You know, red and blue lightsabers. You know, that they mean
Yeah,
something
yeah.
to the character.
Red looks harsh and strong and cool, and the blue is like, it's a cold color, but it's presented in sort of a more friendly way, like a refreshing way.
Yeah. That's very cool.
How are the eyes going?
The first coat was on there, and I was right that gold looks ridiculously cool.
Yeah,
So
that's good.
we'll show it off in a little bit, but
Ooh,
yeah.
that glowing cat eye effect.
Yeah. So
Coming along well.
yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. How's everybody else doing?
I got this wing about halfway stained glass paneled, so I'm gonna try and get some color on it in the next 15 minutes or so here.
I'm pretty happy with where my eyes are at. On models, a lot of models of this scale, it's a little bit challenging sometimes, especially humanoid ones, to you see exactly where the sculpt of the eyeball is. And so I might do like a layer or two of skin on the face, but before I invest too much time in the face, I want to kind of plot out where the eyes are going to be. And so I'll take a dark color, like a dark brown or anything that kind of would match the skin that I'm painting, if it's like an alien skin or something. And I'll kind of like paint where the eyes are going to end up, like the largest bounds of the eyes. And then I can look at the face and I can see, okay, with the eyes blacked out, are they the same size? Are they kind of angled inward or outward? Am I messing up somewhere? And then once I've established like the border of where the eye should be with a dark color, then I'll come in with my bright eye white color and fill in that eyeball. And so I'm not sure if we can see it on the camera very easily, but there should be a little brown line that surrounds each eye.
There we go.
Oh my
Great zoom.
gosh, that is incredible. So there should be a little bit of a
that looks real
outline around the eye,
Yeah.
and then some pupils in there. How we're looking down into the left, and then once I have like the eye white nicely inside of that dark color, then I can do my pupils, and then I can clean up the upper cheek because I'll often have a little bit of like paint that kind of goes under a cheek or something like that, and then I kind of don't touch the eyes for the rest of the face painting. So I kind of like do a little bit of face, all of the eyes, and then the rest of the face, so I can clean up my brush mistakes, and then so I can get the eyes nice before I've done all of the skin blending and stuff like that.
Very cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like being able to use the texture that's there to sort of paint an optical illusion, also something we were talking about beforehand. Just applying color to the nose, the forehead, the tops of the cheeks, the chin, and then as long as you've got sort of a fleshy tone beneath that you painted over, that gets you so much of the way to looking like a face, because from a distance you read the face as like the bright colors in a certain layout overshadowed areas.
Absolutely, yeah. That's actually a thing you encounter a lot in traditional art when illustrating a face. There are lines that are incredibly important that define the main features of the face, the cheekbones, like the hood of the brow, the chin, that the eyes, that go so far in helping you to see a face and recognize it as that. And the same is true for painting miniatures and stuff like that. From 10 feet away, you see those important lines, it reads as a face.
Very cool.
Do you guys have any art background in here at all?
I went to
Nope.
art school.
Nice.
I have my degrees in illustration, actually. I don't
Very
do a ton
cool.
of it these days, but yeah, I mean, I'm a marketing graphic designer too, so.
Okay. Where'd you go to school? Somewhere
MCAD,
local?
right here.
Okay, nice.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
I liked it, so I stuck around.
Cool, cool.
Yeah. So
We're glad you did.
Yeah.
I'm glad I did too. So I bring a little bit of those hot tips with into this. Like this is acrylic paint, and I was taught basically you start dark and build your way up to light with acrylic paints, and it doesn't not 100% of the time, but most of the time that's kind of how I'll approach it for like painting with a brush. The airbrush I kind of go opposite because it's the thin layers and stuff. And you don't need to go to art school to get the advice about just not using straight up black paint in your mixing. So that's another one that I live by that. Simple.
Yeah.
So, Scott, I'm wondering if you have any techniques you're gonna look into devoting some time to, some self-guided learning.
Yeah. One thing that I've been really trying to teach myself these past 2 years is how to paint larger quantities of figures to a place where I'm happy with the quality, but it's not taking me like 8 hours for an individual figure.
Yeah.
Because I can paint it into
If you figure that out, let me know.
Right, yeah. I'm slowly figuring it out. My goal is to get a painted army or warband for like all games. Like I like to have one on hand, and so I've been slowly figuring it out. But really, the most important thing that I've discovered in doing that is first and foremost finding a level of quality that you are comfortable with saying is done.
Oh yeah.
And that comes from taking a model and putting it down and being like, I'm done with this. And then you go to play with it, and you're like, is that actually like good enough? Am I happy with this? Am I noticing the paint job while painting? And if the answer is no, then you probably kind of are in the right area, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of just keep pushing it. You kind of keep, okay, I'm gonna paint this model in 3 hours, in 2 hours, in 1 hour. And then once you start to kind of like, maybe not be so happy with the paint job, now you're starting to find that bound. So once you can find that, then you can try to like live in that world, apply techniques that make sense, and stuff like that. So that's the biggest area of improvement for me in the last like year or two. But beyond that, since I have been painting so many like gaming miniatures, I do want to start getting back into display painting. And one thing I've never really formally thought a whole lot about or really tried is object source lighting, where an object in the scene is illuminating the miniature like a glowing orb or something like that. I have ideas of how it should work, but I've never really like given it a real fair shake. So I want to try that.
That's a cool one.
Yeah. How about you? How about you guys?
Well, I mean, this technique that I'm doing here, trying to paint stained glass, I looked to see if somebody else had done it or tried to do it, and I couldn't find anything. So I looked at some like comic book style drawing, and also cell shaded animation style drawing.
Yeah. In the plastic robot world, that's a really cool one.
Because it's a similar enough technique, but I'm really trying to capture the because for context for anybody who joined us, within the game of Descent and within the setting of Terranoth, a lot of our historical material, like stuff that's historical within the setting, is often presented as stained glass, and I just love that effect. And so that's why I'm trying to do this like that. So we'll see.
This is a very cool idea. You mentioned it yesterday, and I also have no idea. I've never seen anyone paint stained glass on like a creature, like an actual organic shape.
Well, one of the things I came to very early on, Mason, if you want to put those two reanimates in front of the camera with their shields facing the camera, is that I would actually have to paint over a lot of the detail that is on the miniatures. I would have to paint that out. Because you can see on the left there, that reanimate, I just applied a brown paint, a thin down brown paint over the shield. And it looks great, but it looks real. Because it gets all the texture, it gets all the wood grain. These miniatures, in a way, are more detailed than the technique I want to do sort of allows for. And then so on the right, I went in just trying to get a solid color. I picked which of the scratches. I used all of the planks to divide into vertical panes, and then I broke them with some of the major scratches. Had to add a couple of my own. And so I am sort of erasing some of the physical detail on the miniature. I wouldn't normally do that, but before this specific effect on this limited set of miniatures, I figured it was worth it.
That's so cool.
Yeah, looks really cool.
It's also very time consuming because all the black lining.
You know, one thing I think that's important to mention, because we're talking about painting faster and talking about time, is that I think miniature painting inherently is not a fast hobby.
Oh,
And it's not supposed to be.
No,
that's
no.
okay. You know, you can paint a single model in 8 hours, and that is fine. You know, it's
Yeah.
all about just like, I think being happy with the outcome and being happy with the process,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
if you're not having fun while you're doing it, do something else for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, definitely people paint as a means to an end for gaming sometimes, and that
Yeah.
is also okay. But if like you're caught in this world of like, I hear people saying how they're trying to, you know, shorten their time painting and paint faster, but I'm okay painting long. Like, you should just live in that world then. That's totally okay.
Fair.
Yeah, and like I had said earlier to them, I've been blacklighting this miniature for 16 hours, but those 16 hours were all spent with other people talking about stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not time wasted. I had fun the whole time.
Absolutely.
I don't think I would work on this particular project without company, but there's other stuff I would paint sort of without having the social element of it there as well.
Yeah. And also on the subject of, you know, the quality you can live with, like, not everyone's models are going to be on a 4K camera. So, you know.
That's true.
Yeah.
Scott's miniature there, you can see it more clearly on the camera than I can see it sitting beside him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it looks good on both.
that is an important thing to remember.
And you can see, specifically, you can see like errors too, because from this angle, I'm just catching like the jaw, the highlight of the cheek, the tone of the armor. When I look over there, now I can see it in too much detail almost. It looks fantastic. don't
Thank
get me
you.
wrong.
Yeah. Actually, can you zoom in a ton again? I want to show another thing. Someone mentioned like sculpting the model, and so one thing I always do with nostrils, which is a really hard thing to see, is she has a bridge of her nose that you can see pretty clearly defined. But on the sides, I've put little dots of highlight, just because that's a common volume that you see on noses.
Yep.
You know, the nostrils, and so you can paint. You can sculpt with paint in a big way. So if you kind of know anatomy a little bit, you can kind of, you know, fix a sculpt or enhance a sculpt. Now, one thing I'm going to give myself some feedback on is that I started too dark of a skin tone. This is so dark of a shadow, and I want to go brighter with my highlight. And this is going to be this is so defined. So I'm going to have to reduce that shadow a little bit, bring it up in brightness.
Cheekbones.
Yeah,
are
that
really
is
nice.
Those are sweet cheeks.
somewhat dark interpretation of her.
Yeah.
Because are you trying to paint specifically the Bryn from the art?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm just going off wild in
down,
whatever
yeah.
direction. Yeah, you know, lately I've felt really just like I don't know if empowered is the right word, but I feel okay painting anything I want in any way.
Great.
That sounds
I'm
empowering.
painting Darth Vader right now. I'm painting with red armor. You know?
yeah,
like,
it's
just throw
cool
caution to the wind.
looking,
Let's go.
Yeah.
Totally irreverent, but
Yeah,
yeah.
your models, you
More
know.
power to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Aaron Haltom, one of the game designers mentioned earlier, said thank you for painting Bryn, and he's going to try to emulate it.
Oh,
We're
nice.
size
Nice.
apparently, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I did not finish. I think I'm going to come back and mess with the eyes a little bit more. But I'll put let's put it over there and let people see, because I tried what you said.
Awesome.
And I'm hoping that it looks fine-ish. Yeah.
On eyes
Oh,
that large,
yeah.
you might even be able to do some brush strokes.
I did a couple brush strokes, and then I was like, don't do that. Like, I just learned how to do this without doing the brush
for
strokes.
the pupils, maybe you could employ that
Yes,
technique.
yeah.
I mean, you know, from that camera, and this honestly, this is also zoomed in. I see the pupils. You know, they're there.
Yeah.
So you're killing it.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's looking like the art to me.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was hoping for. Oh man.
Yeah, one thing about pupils also that's important to keep in mind is that oftentimes when we are sitting here with our kind of a relaxed expression, a decent amount of our pupil is covered by our eyelid, right? And so if you paint an eye and you paint it such that you can see the entirety of the pupil, that kind of gives your character a very crazed, you know, look. And so if you can paint more of a kind of occluded circle as a pupil, then it looks more relaxed and more natural. Yeah, it's something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
It's so interesting how such a small detail can
Oh,
really
yeah.
impact how the thing feels. It's cool.
Yeah, my aiming point is just to get a spot of dark relatively evenly distributed.
Not
if I even do it
chameleon-like.
at all. Yeah. So I am at the point now where I'm going to try and start putting color on this wing. So Mason, if you want to hold that wing down in front of the camera. I've finished, quote unquote, paneling out the wing membranes on that wing to try and get more of a stained glass effect there. So I will be, as I paint this, I will be trying to treat each of those sections as if I was painting it a separate color, even though I'm using a similar color across all of it, to get that effect of basically pieced together from dozens of pieces of glass.
How long do you think the whole thing's going to take you? Do you want to think about it?
No. I don't want to think about it.
Okay.
But like, if it looks even close to, like, this is such a big project. We worked on it for a year and a half. It's basically a celebration of that.
Nice.
So I took it as an excuse to just do something completely different from what I normally do. Because normally I would go for a very like base coats, a wash, highlight the things that I care about, but only after I see what it looks like with the wash on. That's normally my approach to almost everything I'm painting.
That's actually a really interesting question. Like, how do you guys typically approach models? Do you go for a more white undercoat, use some kind of thing like contrast paint, express paint, speed paint? Do you go for a zenithal undercoat and then paint on top of that? Like, how do you guys approach most models?
I really like a brown cream undercoat
Okay.
because I feel like that gives some warmth, and it looks fine in the shadows if you leave it there, but it's not so dark that it is going to mess up any light thin colors, particularly anything yellow, red. I'm trying to paint orange. Generally, I'm not doing large surfaces orange. I learned that lesson.
Okay. But so like a brown undertone, and then like maybe a cream zenithal highlight from above or something like that? Or just one flat base coat?
My base coats will be, if I do a zenithal highlight, it is more so that I can see the details. Zenithal, for the audience, if folks who aren't aware, a zenithal highlight is when you spray, usually with a lighter color, down from above, so it picks out all the details, because all the raised surfaces will be shaded lighter than the downward facing surfaces. I base coat so heavily that none of that is going to show through anyways.
Okay.
That's just the way I apply paint.
Yeah.
And so when I do that, it's more so that I can see the detail that I'm painting,
Okay.
and less for the impact of it showing through.
Okay.
With
Yeah,
the
maybe that's my
exception
thing.
of
I'm
some
a little bit
zombies
of
I
a-
did recently.
Yeah.
There was a very nice, I think it was one of the Army Painter speed paints, the zombie skin one. I was really enjoying
Yeah.
that just over a white.
Yeah.
All
How do
right,
you guys-
let's
how
get
do you
this.
approach miniature painting? What's your typical course of action?
I usually, these days, I've been putting down a pretty hefty thing of, some sort of speed paint, something like that. And like I did for this one, this is just like, dumped a bunch of purple on it, and then I'm going from there and hoping a little bit of that shows through at the end. But I don't know, I'm a little bit of a zenithal highlighting skeptic, I guess. But maybe it's maybe I'm just like Brooks, and I
Let's
just,
talk about that.
Yeah.
What are your disbeliefs? What are your concerns?
I just think that maybe it's just I'm putting on so much paint that it just doesn't come through at the end. But it looks cool when you do it. But then by the time I'm done, I'm like, okay, I don't know if I can tell that it did anything.
Very fair.
I know for a fact I am doing that. I am putting on far more paint.
I honestly
it doesn't
never
show
even
through.
considered that. That's just as simple as that. Probably put too much paint on there.
Yeah,
to
I
make it
mean,
worth
to
it.
me, a zenithal undercoat has multiple benefits.
Mm-hmm.
One of those things is what you're suggesting, that if you use transparent acrylic paint, you are adopting the value of the lights below,
Mm-hmm.
right?
This is gonna work.
As a fun aside, I did an experiment a super long time ago
Yeah.
where I painted a black, gray, and white rectangle. And then I painted a yellow, red, and blue swatch over all of them. And I did it like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 layers. So I could see how many layers it takes to fully obscure an undercoat. And you'd be surprised how many layers you need to really remove that effect entirely.
Totally.
But the thing about miniatures is that subtle effects aren't great. Like you need high contrast, you need things that pop off. So I get that comment about zenithal undercoating. The one thing for me that's helpful with it is that you start black and you do white from above. And that means that if you miss a detail, oftentimes on the lower side of the model, it stays black. If we contrast that with priming a model with white paint and then trying to paint it, anything you miss sticks out like a sore thumb. And so it's kind of like you get the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
You get a white undercoat where it matters, which means that the colors you put down are going to be more vibrant. They're going to be easier to base coat over white. But on the lower parts that maybe you might miss or are hard to reach because of a weapon that's in the wrong place, they stay black. And so if you miss them, they don't stand out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
So yeah,
makes
it's
sense.
less of a thing that impacts the end result, more of a convenience measure.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to change my mindset on that. That makes more sense to me now.
Yeah, or just try it out and see if it matters for you. You
Yeah.
know? Yeah. I think that's super important. Is that people like watch a lot of content on the internet and they kind of just take what people say at face value and kind of just adopt it. But I think it's really important for all of us to like hear something, try it out, see if it impacts our process and what we paint, see if it applies, and then if it doesn't, just like kind of let it go.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like it's a technique I'm aware of. The way I paint, it doesn't help me a whole lot.
There you go. Yeah.
So that's totally however that is working out for you.
Yeah. I'm pretty happy with the face right now. I could paint a face for a very long time, even though it's like the size of a pinky fingernail. But to move on here and get some more interesting effects, I'm going to start highlighting all of this incredibly detailed armor.
There. We've got about 10 minutes left.
Okay.
So,
Oh,
I did it.
flying
I
through
painted the
time.
face for the entire thing.
Yeah, I just got waved down behind the camera, and I was like, oh, wow, like I thought we were here for like maybe 30 tops already.
Yeah, time flies.
I'm too used to my painting streams. They're 3 hours long. And,
Yeah.
and half of them are me talking about very bad 80s fantasy movies. So I burn a
There
lot
you
of
go.
time, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a very cool green you got going on. That kind of reminds me of like Beatles.
Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah. It
Yeah.
has like a metallic sheen. Yeah,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure. Yeah. This armor is actually so detailed that I bet it would take a dry brush incredibly well.
Oh yeah.
Which is definitely the kind of thing that I should have thought about beforehand and done before I painted the face, because sometimes it can get a little crazy, and when you dry brush paint, and it kind of gets all over the place. And kind of humorously, the most detailed part is right on her chest, which is like closest to the face. So I wouldn't want to dry brush that. But yeah, important to sometimes think about what your approach to painting the model is going to be before you just start slapping paint on. Something that I rarely do.
Yeah, there's the underside of one of Leverx's wings here that's folded in. If I was doing a more traditional paint scheme, right, just like solid colors, work up dry brushes, highlights, that would be great to work on in there. Like that would, it's in shadow anyways. But because I'm trying to do such a crisp effect here, I had it turned upside down, had my brush propped on stuff.
Yeah,
And I was like, at a certain point, I was like, well, I got most of it. I'm not going to get it all done before the stream anyways, so.
Was that your goal originally, to have it done in time, or like?
No,
Okay.
but it was like a useful milestone, right?
Okay, yeah.
Like I wanted to have it far enough along that I could be putting color on some part of it, so that you and I could see if it worked or not. So we'll see. But this is coming out pretty well.
Nice.
Sort of a watercolory. I've got a mix of a pale, like it's like a turquoise, not really a green, but I mixed in some yellow to pull it much greener.
Okay.
And I mixed in a bit of glaze medium as well, and it's getting pretty close to a watercolor effect actually, which if I can prevent it from pooling too much in the texture, will give me the, like it's working.
Nice pale kind of color.
So you see through, yeah, because I want that translucency of this is glass and you're getting light from the other side of it.
Okay.
I got a little fun one to show off. I brought today. That's I just tried this last night. We can go to the other camera. This is the Hobby Next pre-order bonus for Act 2. excuse me. So this is Indris, the the Phoenix, right? Indris Phoenix.
Yes.
Yeah. And so it's a transparent orange, and I was trying out something where I just threw a little bit of a matte top coat on there, and then used a little speed paint to try to see what that would look like, and it's definitely darkened the crevasses a little. Kind of wish I had thinned the paint a little bit more because it got a little. It looks really good on camera from what I'm seeing, but in person it looks a little bit darker than I'd like. But I might go darken up a couple more areas further on.
That looks really good.
Thank you.
You want to do mine too?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll bring it in.
Yeah, no, I'll do.
Phoenix,
I
tricked you into that one. Yeah,
you tricked me into doing work for you, but
Yeah.
I'll do it. It's fun.
yeah. I'll throw mine up there to do one last look at it here in a second.
Speaking of being tricked into doing work, you always got to be careful when you're like part of an RPG group and you're a miniature painter.
Oh, you're good at that.
If they catch wind of that, you're doomed. You're doomed. You're painting all their models, and you're just basically a commission painter for free.
Maybe you could negotiate with the game master for some experience or something.
Shares of the party's loot.
Yeah.
That's the danger of like. Oh, come on, Thought. Where'd you go? I was just thinking earlier today about like how the game master ends up also being the person organizing and scheduling and like take some of the burden off of your game master on your role-playing groups. You organize the logistics so that they can organize the game.
Yeah, let's throw
Or
this one.
play Descent, where you can just do the logistics and the game will run it all itself for you.
Exactly.
Because we did it.
All right, there's Chance over there. Messed up the eyes going back to it, but that's okay.
I don't know.
It is definitely going to need some more work, but we're on our way for sure.
Yeah.
I love that
that's
purple.
That's a great start.
Yeah.
Yeah, the purple's pretty nice.
Because you said you hadn't painted a whole lot.
No, I have painted, I think, a total of 15 miniatures in my entire life. Most of those about 4 years ago. No, 4 years ago. You know, pandemic times, it worked out very well. I was like, yeah, I'll do this as a hobby. And got 15 in, and it was like, oh, now I have all these other games that I need to play too.
Was that while you worked at Fantasy Flight as well?
Before.
Before, okay,
Yes.
cool.
Yeah, and so I came up here, and I have not painted miniatures since I've been up here, really. I painted one since then.
Okay.
Because I got a little promo, and I was like, well, I've got to paint that.
Okay. I mean, I couldn't tell. You're painting pretty well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm going to call that good for today. But, yeah, do we want to show off everybody's before we close out the stream?
Sure.
I'll go because I'm closest.
The
Yeah.
one thing with this is I got to be careful not to touch it because it'll
Oh, yeah.
pick up very quickly.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
It
Mason.
takes
that
a while
looks
to dry.
I just started getting a little tiny bit of fluorescent green in the mix just to really, get the saturation in the green. So it's not totally the green, the brightest green I'll get on there, but it's getting there.
Mm-hmm.
I like the how the face is going so far. Scary. I don't think I'll do pupils on this. I think it's just going to be glowing yellowy eyes.
Do it.
Yeah, that'd be sweet.
It's evil looking.
That's really cool.
Same thing, that wing.
Oh, that looks so good.
Yeah, I'm very
that's
pleased with
nice,
how that's
yeah.
coming out. I got very, very light. I'll probably do a second coat, but I'm painting each of those panels as if it was a separate piece.
Yeah.
So I'm not just slathering it all over everything. That means it doesn't run and pool as much
That's
in the sculpted recesses. I can
Yeah, that's-
shape it more.
Well, let's post it once it's fully done.
Speed
Or
paint
once
like that
you,
is very,
get a wing.
time sensitive.
Yeah, I'll finish the wing. We'll post
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
We're not. You're not gonna wait for me to
Yeah, I
finish
don't-
this all.
I don't want that pressure to be on you, is what it is. I want you to enjoy painting it and not be like, oh gosh, I got to get this done.
I started highlighting some of the gold armor, and I also painted some of the tassels in like a dark, rich brown color. Because I kind of figured that the majority of the model is kind of a green hue, right? And so I want to contrast that a little bit. And so the sash around her waist and the tassels in front of her, or in between her legs, I painted in a brown-red color. So it's kind of like if I were to use red, which is like the contrasting hue to green, it would kind of look like Christmas, right?
Yeah.
It's a little bit too on the nose. And if you use a color that's kind of like in the world of red, then it kind of helps to contrast that green nicely without just being too obnoxious.
Yeah.
That was my thought process with picking brown for those. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that sort of green tinted armor came out real nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, it really did.
I have to remember that effect.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, for those in our audience that don't know where to find you, where can they find you to see more minis painting?
Yeah, the primary place is YouTube. So youtube.com/Miniac will get you there. I'm also on Instagram. It is a more obnoxious link. It is Miniacal. It's like maniacal, but with an I, and then an underscore at the end, because that wasn't available either, apparently. But yeah, those two places are where I post most of my stuff. I'm also on Twitch, twitch.tv/Miniac. Those places.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, for the rest of us, you can catch us here as well. But until next time, thank you all for joining us today. Hopefully you learned something. And be sure to pick up Descent, The Betrayer's War in your local game store or at store.asmodee.com. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.